Good evening. This is the monthly meeting of the Vancouver Community Group of the Institute of Noetic Sciences. The Noetic Sciences is an international organization dedicated to consciousness research and education. You can contact them at noetic.org. So tonight we have our speaker is Jane DeForest. So I met Jane in 1996 on a trip to Egypt with Greg Braden, and we've been friends ever since. She's an amazing artist. She said she was an artist, but she's an amazing artist. She's an author. Her book Love Never Dies has won a couple of awards and is really a good book if you haven't read it. She's an intuitive, a medium. She helps people communicate with loved ones that have passed over, with pets, and with people's higher individual selves or their higher mind for personal information. She's also now an astrologer. She's a beekeeper, and her topic tonight is about hive mind. Several mystics are saying that as consciousness transforms in humanity, we will be evolving into hive mind, like bees and murmurations of birds. When I saw that Jane was talking about hive mind, I wanted to hear what she knows. As we move through these chaotic times, the breakdown to a more conscious future, I wondered what that might look like. So I asked Jane to come tonight and tell us what she's learned from the bees and all the other spiritual work she's done. So welcome, Jane, and thank you for coming.
Thanks, Dottie. It is an honor to be back with your group. So thank you so much for the invitation. I've been so looking forward to sharing this wisdom. And I really do see it as wisdom. So with this presentation this evening, I wanted to be inclusive. So in keeping with the bee's wisdom, I want to be able to answer and have an experience as well as sharing the knowledge that I've gleaned. So let's start by taking your index fingers and putting them on your temples. And we're just going to buzz, go bzz, moving it down to under your, right under your ears. Bzz, bzz, bzz. Bringing your awareness to your fingers as you put it over your ears and buzz. Bzz, it's really interesting because many people talk about during near-death experiences, which is a condition when people die and return to tell the tale, that there's a buzzing that they hear. I think that's so interesting. So I'd like to start with my foundational experience with communicating with bees and share a little bit about how I got started with this amazing adventure. So I have been communicating professionally with interspecies spirits on the other side, animals on the other side, and interspecies communication for about over 20 years. And it was after my return from Egypt, my second trip to Egypt in 2017, that a friend of mine invited me to talk to her beehives in her backyard. There were quite a few, I think there were 8, and I'll read you a little bit from an excerpt from the story. She was having trouble with her beehives because they were dying. And so she wanted to know what was happening to them. So it was a practical problem, and she invited me to communicate with them. So I have a certain protocol that I use when I'm communicating with animals or people or ancestors on the other side. My primary training as far as cultivating my intuition has been through the formal training that I've had is a technique called remote viewing. This is a military application and it uses coordinates, and it's very sort of austere and specific, and accuracy is the most important aspect of this training. So I took that training and applied it to my own artistic. I was a professional artist for many years and I painted murals primarily, large scale painting. So um, I eventually was able to take my artwork and converge it with this technique for getting accurate, specific psychic information with my intuitive psychic abilities. So I made it my own. So what I do when I'm um, this is just, I covered the name, but this is an example of a typical reading that I do, is I draw the certain things, and it's like a Rorschach test, and I can get accurate information. If I can't achieve between 80 to 95% accuracy when I'm first starting the reading, I'll return people's money. So I don't know too many psychics that do put themselves on the line like that. Being 60% is greater than chance, and it's considered a good psychic. So being at that accuracy rate um, is expecting a lot, really. But why I do that is to establish that I'm accurate, and also so that when we go into a session, that I'm able to get accurate information at a high level. So we're assuming that I'm doing accurate and good work. So when my friend invited me to help her with her beehives, I said, well, I have never read a bee before, so this will be a new adventure, but I'll proceed in the way that I do with an and technically I'll use the same technique. And and I'll meet it with an open heart. Uh, so it was, and I wanted to I want to read just a little bit of the excerpt, and then I'll share my screen. So here's my website, and this is the type of work that I do. This is my tells you a little bit about the work that I do, the shamanic healing and the intuitive sessions and classes and so forth. So if you go up here to bee communication, this is where you'll see here. And I wanted to show you, this is a picture of Yoda. And this was a picture of Queen Rain. So when I was meeting with the bees, I approached the hive as if I wanted to speak to the queen. You know, I'm an American human, so I thought I want to talk to the boss. So I sat down and I prepared myself to speak to the queen, and you can see all these frequencies. This is exactly what the bee told me. There, it was extremely interesting. Bee Queen Rain had a lot to say. When she spoke extensively last summer, we met in the backyard of beekeeper and New York Times bestselling author Susan Chernak. All right, really, the backyard was a portal. It was a symphony of splendor, flowers, flowering plants, bubbling fountains, with 8 beehives and lots of wildlife, including ducks, dogs, and a baby possum. The magic was so thick you could swim in it. Hidden amongst the modest suburban homes, her secret energy portal backyard transports visitors to a multidimensional domain where anything can happen. Susan called me wanting to know if I might be able to talk to her hives. She had questions about her bees. I was excited to attempt the interspecies communication, but truth be known, I was also a little dubious. Although talking with dogs, cats, and horses was something that I felt comfortable, I had never spoken to a bee before. I arrived one sunny May day with pad and paints in hand, ready to talk to Queen Bee Rain and her hive, Rain Tree. That, by the way, that's what she had named her hive, is Rain Tree. I approached the beehive and said a prayer, opening my mind and merging with the hive's consciousness. The conversation began easily. As bees flew around my head, the quality of the intelligence and wisdom of the bees surprised me. They had a powerful presence like Yoda, and wisdom like an old woman. They seemed to possess a very high intelligence that was crisp and insecty, although it felt loving and sort of familiar. Rain, Rain, the queen bee, told me that in fact she was not only an individual, but that she was also a whole, an entirety. She was both a queen and a hive. The concept of being both a single unit and individual parts required me to expand my concept of what a being is. Yes, I say being, because I saw the bees as sentient beings. Queen Rain went on to describe how everything is interconnected by telepathically sending me the image we call the flower of life. The image of the glyph was interconnected circles, which the queen hive described as symbolizing creation, no less. I painted it on a picture above her head. Queen Rain and the Rain Tree Hive proceeded to show me that all beings have vibration or resonance with information somehow riding on it. The information, which has a feeling and intelligence to it, also fluctuates depending on the time of day, on the available sunshine and temperature. The resonance, energy, information, intelligence is also impacted by the thoughts of human beings. I want to say that again. The resonance slash energy slash information slash intelligence. I want to unpack that a little bit. So it was a combination of multiple elements, is also impacted by the thoughts of human beings. She explained that every living thing possesses this vibration resonance, including planets, stars, flowers, trees, as well as colors and smells. This information penetrates the electromagnetic field around people, commonly called the aura, as well as our physical body. On my next visit, I brought little alabaster pyramids as an offering to the 8 beehives. As I circled them, I placed the alabaster pyramid reverently before each beehive entrance. My intuition told me that the bees craved altars because in some way it was important energetically. Backstory: I had just returned from the world's most powerful place, Egypt, where my daughter and I had seen the Sphinx and sailed the Nile. We had charged the little alabaster pyramids in the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid on the Giza Plateau. On my website, you can watch some of the videos, but what I wanted to share was how the bees communicated that everything was interconnected and had power. The frequency and the vibration of every living thing emanated a field, and that field was affected by other things. So when I first start to work with someone, I told you that I'm looking for 80 to 95% accuracy. So I asked the bees for them to show me something that I could prove that was accurate. What they showed me was the people that lived at the house, the husband and wife, who are actually divorced now, and they showed me that they had red energy that was focused at each other, and there was red arrows heading towards each other. And they indicated that this had happened several days prior to when I was sitting in front of talking to them. So I asked my friend, I said, so does that make any sense, the description of the event I just described? And she said, oh, yes, that happened several days ago. My husband and I stood right where you indicated, or the bees indicated, and we had a rip-roaring argument. So it was really interesting the bees interpreted it energetically. And so we were able to discern that I was actually talking to the bees. The bees also indicated that the reason they were dying was because someone in the vicinity, in the community, was using Roundup. Roundup is poisonous to bees, FYI. It's it's an herbicide. So just saying. And the bees showed me from an aerial view, which is sort of interesting, where the house was on the block. So I was actually able to identify the house where the poison was being sprayed and was hurting them. So I thought that was very interesting. Um, they also indicated that they were very connected to the moon, obviously the sun, but the moon surprised me. Also, different star clusters. And the Pleiades was one that they said was important. The Pleiades in UFO lore and circles is considered to be the birthplace or the home planet to civilizations that have come and cultivated civil civilizations here on Earth. Before we started this, we were talking about Subarus. Subaru, interestingly enough, in the logo is the Pleiades. I think there's a lot of symbols hidden in plain sight that we don't realize necessarily what they are. They did show me the flower of life and did give me an interesting message about creation. So the queen bee, there were several hives, and as I said, I walked in as an American human, and I wanted to talk to the boss. I want to talk to the queen, right? And so no, no, no. The queen is the hive, and the hive is the queen, and it's a collective intelligence. It's interesting to note that beehives have a temperature, the hive itself, of 98.6, like a mammal. There is some cutting edge philosophies that actually the hive is a mammal. The bees are both insects and mammals. So I think that's pretty fascinating. They did have an insect equality, but I have to say they did have a higher intelligence in the same way a dolphin, and I've done dolphin communication. Dolphins are really amazing. These bees that the queen slash hive that I was communicating with showed me about creation. She showed me about a when she's laying eggs that she disappeared and there was a green channel of light that came down from above, and all there was the laying of eggs. Back in 96, when I was in Egypt for the first time, we were in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid on the Giza Plateau, which is the largest chamber and it's the highest chamber, although new chambers are being found. A new chamber has just been found about a year or so ago. When you go in, there's what's called a sarcophagus, although no mummy has ever been found in it. As a matter of fact, no mummy has ever been found in any of the pyramids. So it's doubtful. I throw doubt on that theory. We took turns laying in this granite box, and the rest of the group chanted around. When I was in this box, I had a revelation and perhaps a communication with some intelligence much greater than myself. That intelligence was talking about creation and showed me that creation was a three-dimensional egg that was a puzzle, or symbolically, I suppose, and that this egg was incredibly elegant and immensely complicated. When I was on the sarcophagus meditating the second time in 2017, I had a revelation about creation and this green light. So this all dovetailed by the time I'd returned from Egypt the second time to be speaking to these bees. There's a connection between bees and Egypt and an important aspect about creation. The pharaohs, where if you look at the golden headdress of Tutankhamun, that's striped with gold and lapis lazuli. This is to emulate the bees. Something extremely profound about bees. And I do want to say that. Um, Over the course of, I was a couple of months where I would return and communicate with the bees. And so the communication that I'm sharing with you today was not one sitting, it was over a period of time. And the bees gave me little bits of information. It required that expanded my consciousness. And I have to say that. And I do feel that the information that I gleaned from the bees required me to be able to be at a certain level to communicate with them. And I want to share with you a little bit about what those levels are and emphasize that anything that I'm sharing with you today about about me being special or having special abilities, I want to really underscore this idea that I am a representative of a normal human being and that I don't necessarily have special talents, but that I've taken, well, I've been raised in a particular way. So I have a certain setup, but I have taken this interest and I have developed it. It is my contention that all of you, all humans, have this ability to rise in their consciousness to be able to access this web of life, this super consciousness, this hive mind. And as Dottie mentioned, that there's people who are talking about as we evolve as humans that we're able to access that. I believe that's true. And I also believe that we have been able to access this hive mind as a collective in the dusty past of the ancient world. If we look at the philosophies of the ancients, they saw the world as a cohesive collective that was sentient. The universe is sentient, the planet sentient meaning it has a soul, that it has intelligence, that it has consciousness, that it isn't mechanistic or dead matter. This ancient idea that expanded into the Middle Ages that Mother Earth is a sentient being. She's a conscious being. She has a soul. Venus has a soul, symbolized by the goddess Venus. The planet Mars has a soul, symbolized by the personification of the god Mars. So these are ancient ideas that animals are sentient beings. Uh, it wasn't until Descartes in the 16th century that we started to look at the world as mechanism. This is a new, within the last several hundred years, that we've looked at the world and animals as just dumb animals, which of course means that we can use them, we can abuse them. Same with trees, same with all kinds of living, Mother Earth, and so forth. So what it requires, I just really want to emphasize this, that this isn't me telling you. It does require thinking differently. So I want to show you some different visuals, a couple different ideas to expand your mind. It is helpful to change the level of your brain waves. Now, when I'm doing readings, I suspected that I was actually changing my brain waves to access this unity consciousness and pluck information from it to share with people and help them, but also to know things, know potential futures, know past lives, know all different kinds of information, which is accessible to all of us. Now, Edgar Cayce, the great American psychic, talked a lot about the Akashic records. This is a collective of all consciousness from all humans. where all information from the past is stored, all past lives, all things that you've ever said, that your grandparents have ever said. It's derived from the Sanskrit word akasha, which is not unlike Carl Jung's idea of the collective unconscious or the superconscious. So these are all applications and names that we name something. Be aware that when we name something, we flatten it like a tree. It's a tree. It's a tree. Well, is it? And my communication with trees has been that they are sentient beings and they're also a collective. They're individuals and they're also a forest collective, and that's how they think. That's how they communicate. One time I was so as far as the brain waves go, I've had work done with Joshua Moore in Vancouver, who's a neuroscientist. He's wrote multiple papers, and he does biofeedback, which was very interesting. And he put the electrodes on and did a brain mapping of my brain. I wanted to see. I was sort of curious, and and he was able to identify trauma and how old I was when I had the trauma. That's how specific this is. When he mapped my brain, he said, "There's something very interesting here, Jane." And I was thinking he'd see the gerbils on the inside. He said, "Your brain is about 4 times as strong as someone your age." I'm 61 years old. He said, Your brain starts to deteriorate in power as we get older, but yours is 4 times the strength that it should be. It is a brain that a teenager would be jealous of, because that when we're 19, apparently it's the strongest. Go figure. He also said you have something highly unusual, which is gamma. You've got high gamma, and you're functioning primarily in alpha because we have all the waves. And he said, "What is it that you do?" So I explained it to him. And what this taught me was that by functionally working as a professional and intuitive, I'm meditating, I'm doing a variety of things. I take medicinal mushrooms like lion's mane, which help grow the synapses. And I spend a lot of time meditating, and I'm out in nature a lot. There's several other things, but let's just call it that for right now. And what I realized is that by exercising my brain in this way, I was able to change the nature of my brain. And with that, the finer the vibration, the more easy it is to access this web of information. So the more narrow, the more logical, the more judgmental, the more attached to general consensus reality a brain is, the least likely it is to encounter this other information, because you don't know you don't believe it and you can't see it. So I just want to say that it does take thinking outside the box. And I really want to invite you, because I don't want this to be about how fabulous I am. Although if you think that, that's okay. At 60, I decided to be fabulous. What I really want to do is reflect your fabulousness and that you're capable of doing this. And it is our birthright. I really believe our psychic ability, which is maligned in our culture, it is taboo. I've been rejected by all kinds of people because of my choice of profession, but also the way that I think. Being able to communicate with animals or trees, or being able to communicate with ancestors on the other side is considered heresy, insanity, or something to be avoided at best. It is maligned in our culture, and that is not the case in all cultures. Indigenous cultures accept this. It's a natural part of how we exist. And everybody has interactions psychically with people. You can, for example, just feeling someone watching you. If you're out in public, you can, if they're behind you and you can feel somebody's watching you and you turn around and they're watching you, this is a wonderful example of the power of consciousness. I died January 3rd this year when we were in Belize, which was for 3 minutes. I was for some years, I was the leader of a group of near-death experiencers called IANS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies. It's a wonderful organization. And we would have monthly meetings like Dottie does, but the people in the group were mostly people who had flatlined and lived to tell the tale. And many of the tales had the same architecture of leaving your body, looking at your body from up above, perhaps the ceiling, floating through a tunnel of light to the end where you would meet a being of light. And you would be shown your life review and perhaps given a choice to return or being sent back to your body, something like that. Mm. I'd always wanted to have a near-death experience, but I didn't want the messy having to be in the hospital recovering from some broken thing in some way. So, but it had been my heart's desire. So this year, January 3rd, we were in Belize and it was the perfect storm. And I started to notice the fringe of my visual field darken, and it got darker and darker and darker. And I started to feel my consciousness was pulling away and I was losing strength. I was leaving my body. So I tried to put myself back in my body, and it took a Herculean effort. It was like climbing Mount Olympus, and all I could squeeze out was, "Oh." and and then I died. And I looked at my husband with imploring eyes, and my brilliant husband knew exactly what to do. He held me and he owned. Om. Om. Not unlike the bees. Om. It's said that that is the sound of the universe. So as I rode this Om home, it was like riding with a dolphin. We had been in Florida at one point and swimming with the dolphins, and you could hold on to the dolphins' fins and they would swim you around. It was so incredible. It was like that. And I rode the waves or the vibrations home. And as I was peeling off, I knew I was dying. My eyes became fixated, my pupils were dilated, and they didn't respond to light. But I wasn't afraid. I had done enough meditation, enough work with plant medicine hallucinogens that I was very comfortable with my riding my consciousness. And with the Om, it really helped. Just for those of you who are, there's a lot of death right now. Those of you who are tending to people who are close to that passage, sound is beautiful. It's a beautiful important vehicle, sort of greases the wheels. The Tibetans know this. They have a chant, an um, ancient mantras that they sing as people die and transition. My father, we put on the Bach cello suites for him as he passed and rode it home. And that was another interesting story I can share if you're interested. But as I died and I peeled my consciousness off and I rode home and I went to a place where there were people I'd known. I didn't know in this life, but they were dear people. They were my people, and there were people I knew from this life. I don't remember many details except a warm, comforting blanket of unconditional love, a love so powerful it it's something I don't know that I experienced here on Earth. As I returned, I remember we were talking about something important. I believe in retrospect it was about creation because ever since I returned, I have been obsessed with making art about creation. I make these beautiful mosaics with glass, all about creation, using different symbols. A lot I've been using the Vesica Pisces and the two circles. It's ironic that Dottie is wearing a necklace of the exact same image that I keep making over and over again. It's so fascinating. As I returned, I was given one snippet to return with. And I kept repeating it over and over in my mind because I could barely speak. And that was live your life. And I thought that was so interesting because I fancied myself a person who was living their life. And people look at me and say, wow, she's really living her life. So I thought, looks like I have some work to do. I still have to figure that out, whatever that is. But I have actually started a new aspect of my business, which I'm really excited about, using crystals. I think crystals are really important for being able to amplify our energy with the increasing fields that are happening. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I have a bunch that I want to talk to you about. It's going to seem perhaps it's a basket of things, but I think it's important. And it's not only interesting to hear what the bees have to say, they also have more to say. So I'm jumping around a little bit. But I also want to talk to you about how we can practically apply these techniques to be able to not only ride the waves that are hitting us, but to excel and just and manifest in a powerful way. We all hear about manifesting and picturing what you want and so forth and so on. I do really think it's critical at this point. So let me talk a little bit about the changes that are happening now and what you might be experiencing. I'll share a little bit about what I see happening with people in my clientele. We've got frequencies that are bombarding Earth. We've also got increased frequencies within the Earth. So the frequency that is often referred to as the heartbeat of Mother Earth, which we call the Schumann resonance, Schumann, I believe. I certainly would encourage all of you to do your own research. Don't believe a word I say. I really want to invite you to, if you're interested, to have fun and see what there is out there. So the Schumann resonance is increasing. It's really fluctuating a lot lately. We've got a reduced magnetic field on the Earth, and we're traveling through a electromagnetic dust cloud that takes about 300 years. Started with the Carrington event in 18 something or other. I think it was 1850 something, which blew out all the telegraph wires. We're right in the middle of it. There's talk about a pole reversal and all that stuff. I don't know if that's true. I do think something's pretty big going to hit us in the 2040s from what I've seen. We're being impacted by fields much, much greater than Earth. There's climate change on all the planets in the solar system. If you're interested in more details about that, Ben at Suspicious Observers talks a lot about what's happening galactically, what's happening in our solar system, and so forth. So I don't want to get too technically into that. It's not my forte, but I can certainly point you in the direction. So what I'm seeing from a personal level with my clientele is that people are experiencing mystical things that are out of their out of the container of their understanding of reality. They are having Kundalini awakening experiences. I can talk about that and what that means. people are having profound psychic experiences. And they're interacting with relatives who've passed, animals who've passed. They're having physical responses to things. And you all in this group may be experiencing these things too. So there's a philosophy that humanity is evolving and that we are moving to humanity 2.0, let's call it that. I would say this is true from my experience, that we are not a stagnant expression of humanity, but that we are humanizing. We are in the process of developing, and as we're developing, we are moving higher up. As you might go from grade school to middle school to high school to university to graduate school, we are moving to higher evolution, evolutionary fields, and therefore it's affecting us, and we're being called, we're being drawn. Another wonderful and important heart mind, that I would love to invite you to investigate is Rupert Sheldrake. He achieved great fame when his TED Talk was banned several years ago, when he was talking about his philosophy about the morphic fields. He's a brilliant Oxford educated scientist and botanist. And what he was sharing was what he discovered about in his philosophy about different fields. He calls them morphogenic fields, that each type of being has its own field that draws, that has all the intelligence and information, all the history of that species, and it is drawing that species into the future as a seed would develop into a sprout, into a plant. We too are being drawn by these fields, and these fields are interconnected, and these fields have intelligence. These ideas dovetail with what the ancients understood to be true. So this is a completely different concept, that we are dead matter, and that we are the only true consciousness is the human mind, and that somehow that has evolved from matter. The ancients understood that it was consciousness that is the foundation, and that matter is adhered to the form of consciousness. I would agree with that, and that's sort of how I see it. And that's what the bees were talking about. The bees are talking about how we're all interconnected, how we overlap with our frequency, and how we affect things. What was so fascinating was how they talked about how I found it the most fascinating because I was a human, how the humans affect the field around them. Know that it is my belief that you are affecting the field around you. And you don't even need to say anything, but know that your words are powerful. Your words really are magic. You are affecting your world with your words. Your consciousness, which I see as a combination of your heart field and your mind. Now, the human has an electromagnetic field that is measurable out to your fingertips if you're healthy, smaller if you're not healthy. I see a lot of people who have small fields. It's been photographed. It could be the auric field. I wanted to share these pictures of Kirlian photography of the field. So this is Kirlian photography showing the energy around a leaf. But I just wanted to show you some of these images here to give you an idea of what the energy field around a living thing looks like. I also wanted to show you these dynamic pictures. This is a Rupert Sheldrake video, cymatics, which is water that is being affected by sound. I know many of you are familiar with this. So know that when you're singing, and we had several musicians talking here, these are different sound frequencies. And here is what the patterns of the hertz are. So you can see the different frequency of sound and the patterns that corresponds. Now, I believe this is related to what the bees were talking about, but I don't think it's just sound. I believe it's consciousness. So what is consciousness? Is it what you're thinking? Well, your thinking mind is one aspect of your mind, but I do believe consciousness is connected to the heart and the home of your soul. I do see that people have souls that do survive death. I do see animals have souls. Animals are sentient beings. It's shocking how much animals know. It really is. I could tell you animal stories all night. It's fascinating. Funny animal stories about what they tell me about their owners. But the bees, I believe, were communicating that we are multidimensional, that we are interconnected with the natural world. We're not separate. We are animals. Our body is an animal. We like to think we're not animals, but we have an animal body, and that body has a separate consciousness than our soul consciousness. The combination is what makes you you. This is what I've discovered. But please don't believe a word I say unless it makes sense to you. It is not my agenda to project my philosophical ideas on you, but only to present them for you to consider. But why is this important? I believe if we understand that we are sentient beings and that we survive death, that death is really, we call it death, but the Egyptians called it westing. And which is interesting because that's the direction that I went as I cleaved off from my body. I went to the west. It's so curious that we will survive death and we're here for a certain time and we really should live our lives. I could go on about that, but I do see there's some questions, and I wanted this to be interactive and to work with where you are and what you're interested in, because I could go in a lot of different directions. Dottie, would you be kind enough to ask the questions for me?
Do you mean in the chat?
In the chat.
They were just two comments. They both said yes to your presentation. So,
All right.
does anyone else have a question while we're taking a break here for a minute? Please raise your hand. Norma raised her hand.
I wanted to make a comment about you being told to live your life. And I notice that I've been being told or called to allow my life to live me for several, maybe a decade or so. And it's been very loud and clear. And what's happening is life is bringing it all, everything. And I can't take it all in, of course, but life is showing me.
So I want to talk a little, thank you for that comment, sister. I think that's a really cool thing that you said about life living through you. I think that's a very interesting way to look at it. I really like that. It's an upside down way of looking at something. And I think by looking at things differently, it's really how we're able to contemplate the unknown and move to a different level of consciousness. Different ways to escape the confines of our consciousness are to alter our consciousness. We can meditate, we can use sound, we can use plant medicine. Hallucinogens have been historically a pretty standard way of escaping the confines of the workaday world. And I mean, it was institutionalized in the ancient world through the Eleusinian mysteries. I became so fascinated with them that I had to get to Eleusis in Greece, which I did, and I photographed it. It was really fascinating, and I did meditations there. In ancient Rome and in ancient Greece, and the Eleusis predates ancient Greece. There is back to the matriarchal cultures at this place. Interestingly, in the ancient world, they did not destroy the prior culture, they just added on to it. So it's easy to, in the excavations, to determine what periods were the area was utilized. So all citizens were allowed to experience the mysteries in Eleusis once in their life. And women could too. Women were not allowed to be citizens, at least in ancient Greece and Rome. Of course, before in the matriarchal culture was a different story. So in the Eleusinian mysteries, the which happened in at fall equinox, the initiates would leave at dawn from the Acropolis, and they would walk to Eleusis, and would take all day. They would get there by evening, and there would be certain trials and offerings to the goddess, and along the way in the form of doves. And once they got to Eleusis, there would be a passion play about descending into the underworld and so forth, which is a whole nother thing. I won't get into that. But the area, which is like a subterranean cavity, they would enter once the passion play, and they would be served the mysteries. Now, this is really interesting, and I started getting interested in this when I was a girl, and my family took us to Pompeii, and there was a villa there, the Villa of the Mysteries, and the murals there are so curious. And what are the mysteries? What are the mysteries? Well, it's very clear you can't talk about the mysteries. Very little was spoken about the mysteries because the punishment was death. So, but it was something that was it was institutionalized by the government, and people were allowed to go, and that the mysteries were served in a cup. Kykeon was the drink, and it's later been discovered that kykeon was a combination of erga, which is a mushroom, a smut that grows on barley, and you'll see it all in the bas reliefs at the archaeological site. You'll see the barley, poppy, so opium. But this is a hallucinogenic brew. So people were able to experience all a different consciousness, and many of them had an experience of oneness with the divine. It changed people. By having these experiences, whether they're Kundalini awakenings or whether they're revelations through sleep deprivation, vision quest, fasting, sundowns, which is where the Indians would hang for several days, muscles on their breasts with eagle talons, if you can imagine, in the heat. So people are changing their consciousness. But the medicine of plants is pretty standard operating procedures in ancient cultures for being able to access this altered state of consciousness and to escape the confines of the workaday consciousness of the body mind, and to be able to access other realms and other levels of this greater mind. And the ancients understood that the greater mind was an extension of the creator, and that humanity was inside of a creator, and we were all interconnected and part of the whole. As time has passed, in the age of enlightenment, we became separate beings and we were mechanized, and consciousness was only the mind, and it didn't apply to animals or plants. So I want to encourage you all to think differently, think outside the box, try to expand your mind, try to think of the consciousness of all things. Imagine yourself connected to a greater consciousness that is ancient, that is a creator consciousness, but that also resides in the creation. You're it, you're the creation, you're the divine child. The symbology is there. We have this ancient symbol of the Ankh, this being the womb, and the mother, and the father is the invisible spark of creation that descends into the dimension of matter into creation. So we have the aspect of the divine spark of the soul. We have of the father, we have the mother, which is the body coming together, immaculate conception. It's a symbol. I'm not saying it isn't Jesus, so don't get upset with me. I'm just saying that this is also a greater symbol, that it's you. You are the divine child. You are that spark you are the creation of the soul and the body. You're it, baby. It's you. And so with that power, with the power of the divine within you, you can create. Be very mindful what it is you think about. And I think there's a disease of negativity and worry, and a disease of people believing that humans are bad. We should have less humans. I'm not saying that humans aren't doing some bad stuff. I get it. But I just mean to notice your thoughts. And if you can notice, it's hard to notice for a fish, it's hard to notice the water that you're floating in the fish bowl. So I'm not saying it's easy, but I really want to, my primary message is you're it. You're powerful. You're on the inside. You're not on the outside looking in. You're on the inside, and you're part of the collective. You're part of the web of life. And without you, we're incomplete. We need you. We need you to be whole. I think by contemplating this, it's empowering. And I do have a secret agenda, and that is, if we as a collective can envision a better future. Dottie has always talked about this. Dottie has always talked about, ever since I've known you, Dottie, and it's been almost 30 years, talked about the shift, peaceful transition into a better world. And I think that's a grand idea. And I think continuing to consider that is absolutely important. As far as future, I do see the potential future of, I mean, that's what I do for a living, besides being able to energetically look at what's going on, or communicating with animals or bees. I also want to put a plug in here for my pro bono work. My service work to the Creator is to do free work for two things. One is children who are unable to communicate, and I've expanded that to adults, so they can't use sign language or they can't speak. So that's my pro bono work. So it's usually with special needs kids. And I also work with children in the school system, teaching them how to connect with their spiritual allies and to have that power. By the way, everybody has spiritual allies. I've never seen anyone who doesn't. You're not alone. So Rupert Sheldrake, if you're interested, he's written wonderful books. One wonderful book is How Dogs Know Their Owners Are Coming Home. It's a great book. But if you just Google Rupert Sheldrake and his famous TED Talk that was censored, which people have uploaded, it's what made him famous. I think it would be lovely, because he's beautifully articulate and a gentle heart and a brilliant mind and a reverent man. Yeah. I want to double back a little bit to the bees if there isn't any additional questions, but let me just check. Are there any more questions?
I would be interested in knowing how I could take some of your classes or courses because I'm just fascinated by the things you've said and I just want more.
Oh, you're sweet. Yeah, thank you. That's so kind. I love teaching. I don't have any classes coming up, but um I'm working with New Renaissance about putting some classes together. I do need to do that, but thank you for that encouragement. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the things, the other things that the bees communicated to me. They loved the little pyramids. I think that's interesting. I think a pyramid shape is important. This is a shungite pyramid that I have in front of my computer because shungite absorbs the electromagnetic field very well. We've used a meter to judge it, to measure it. But I like the bees love the pyramids. Now we found the pyramids have been very effective. We have 51-degree pyramids, copper pyramids, and 70-degree copper pyramids. I've just built a regeneration chamber in my house using a 70-degree copper pyramid, almost 10 kilos of crystals. I just came back from the Tucson Gem Show, so I'm going to be expanding and making these available. And these power coils that I've been creating with some artisans to be able to have these available tools for people to use. These are some tools. I want to talk to you about practical application, about how to alter your consciousness if you're not necessarily interested in taking plant medicine or meditating for 5 hours a day. I do think these pyramids, especially the copper is really important. It's a wonderful conductor and it helps elevate these. I'm using something that's called a Lemurian crystal. It's from a particular area. And I find these to be the most effective, simple crystals to be able to enhance our mental capacity. So the 70-degree pyramid is a long, skinny pyramid. And it's something that I use to meditate and to heal, and it's a healing pyramid. The bees loved the pyramids. They loved the pyramids and they loved the altars. I happen to see, this is my opinion, but I feel it very strongly, that by having a physical representation of a reverent intention actually creates a portal or a focused power center to help you. So what does that mean? That means if you're setting up, now an altar has a religious connotation. You could call it a focal point if you felt uncomfortable with this terminology. I can use all different kinds of terminology. It's really secondary. So if you find that I'm using words that offend you, know that these are these is just a way that I'm trying to communicate ideas. But I think by having some kind of focus where you've got intention and you're using physical things in this world to symbolize your intention, drawing it, writing it, yeah, but doodling it and drawing it on unlined paper is extremely powerful. And making a sacred center, perhaps your intentions, honoring ancestors, inviting your allies to be part of this, your angels, your guides. We all have them. Let's remember that they're in the natural world. The natural world is a sentient being. I remember when I was walking through the forest and I was consciously trying to connect with the web of life. And so I walk in the forest every day for an hour. So that's my meditation. So I was consciously connecting with the trees and asking to understand the web of life. I then saw with my mind's eye, I saw this with my eyes open, by the way. I saw luminous threads that connected all the trees. And as I was moving through the trees, I saw those lines changing. As I was moving, the connection was still there, but it was changing. So I came home and we've got 9 Doug firs in the front yard. So I went to the studio and got yarn and got a ladder and tied it a thread to all the trees in the front yards. I interconnected them. And my mom, my elderly mother lives with us, and she came home and she goes, "Well, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I was walking through the forest and I was connecting with the web of life, and I saw a luminous thread that connected all the trees, all things, really." And she said, "Oh, well, that's interesting. That's what I saw when I was on ayahuasca." And then my husband came home and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I just saw these women." Then I went, and he's like, "Well, what are the neighbors gonna think?" It's like, I don't know, but that's what I have to do. Another time when I was in the forest, I asked to be able to see the spirit of the trees. And what I saw, sorry, it's so moving. I saw children. I saw children standing by one child by each tree. Um, uh, it was it was a game changer because I saw them as people, perhaps. Now, my husband understands trees as being antenna, which I thought was interesting because we found out later that the different indigenous people see the trees as antenna. So what he does is he sends prayer through the trees up, up and out to the cosmos, prayers through the trees. So here I wanted to introduce just a few ideas about trees that perhaps you hadn't ever considered before. And by contemplating these out there woo-woo ideas that are actually well-founded both in antiquity and indigenous cultures, it's not woo-woo to an indigenous person to understand that a tree has consciousness. I remember reading about how a tribe in the Amazon jungle uh, wanted to kill a tree because they wanted to harvest it for some reason. So instead of cutting it down, they all stood around and would yell at the tree. I mean, I think it's so interesting. Indigenous cultures understand that trees are living beings, and the ancient world understood that trees were ancient beings and sacred. It is only in this narrow time that we are now coming out of the Kali Yuga, of the time of ignorance. We're moving up through the Bronze Age. We're in the Bronze Age now. We moved out of the Iron Age. The Bronze Age will be moving to the good news is we're moving up to the Silver Age and the Golden Age. The bad news is it's going to be several thousand years, but we are heading in the right direction. We're heading to a higher level of human evolution. And I do believe there's certain ways to do it. Thinking differently is important. I think having crystals around that you're attracted to, they don't have to be mine, but I do feel that help. I think copper helps. I think reducing your electromagnetic field is helpful. Getting out in nature is essential. There are some other things too, but I want to make sure that there aren't any questions because I can go in several different directions, and I think we're probably running out of time.
You have a half an hour.
Okay, I would like to have an experience with you. And so I'd like to share with you an ancient Hindu chant that's in Sanskrit that's performed by a modern artist right now. Is see if you can focus on your heart, mustering up the feeling of love, because this is about your heart. Being able to experience the oneness of the universe is not a head job. It really requires the wisdom of the heart, the single eye of the heart. So imagine, bring your awareness to your heart. if you can muster up the feeling of love, perhaps someone that you love unconditionally, they be two-legged or four-legged, and feel the connection and the love that you feel for that person. They may actually be past, and that's okay. Love never dies. And once you cultivate that unconditional love in your heart, fire building in your heart, and then imagine that you're connecting. Connect with, perhaps if you have a tree outside or other person in the house, then continue to expand to other trees, other living beings in your community, in your village, in your area of the country. I think we're all in the Pacific Northwest. I know this is a Vancouver group, but I do believe there's people from California here. So imagine that you're expanding in your geographical area. You keep expanding around the continent and then connecting with Mother Earth. Imagining that all the luminous fibers reconnect around the Earth. So you're connecting to all of the Earth. We could go to the expanding to the universe, but let's call it the Earth. Let's just be connected to all living beings on the Earth. So you may lose a sense of self. You may become both yourself and the whole collective, which is really I think it's perfect because you are both yourself and your everything. So see if you can try to emulate that feeling of being everywhere and everything. This is really the key. If once you start practicing this, it might feel a little awkward, or it might come naturally because it's the essence of who you really are. You're just remembering. This is a key to help you in a practical way in these changing times that are coming. And I predict that they will continue to change more than we can even ever imagine. So, any questions before we go into the meditation? Oh, I will ask that you could lay down if you want, or sit up straight, and keep your eyes closed. All right. Any questions before we
So
start?
Jane, there were two questions out here.
Yeah.
One said, is there a preferred type of crystal material for the 70-degree pyramid?
Oh, I really like the Lemurian crystals, the seed crystals. They're clean, they're simple, hardworking crystals.
Okay. thank you.
But whatever you're attracted to.
Okay. And the other question was, could you please repeat what shungite does with EMFs? Thank you.
Yeah. So this is shungite. It comes out of Russia. And it absorbs the electromagnetic fields. The pyramid seems to be the most effective shape. So we have people put them in front of their computers. It's called shungite. It's a funny name. So take a moment to close your eyes and notice your breath. Notice your breath as it enters your nostrils and let it go. Bring awareness to your breath as it is in your left nostril. Bring awareness to your chest as it rises and falls with your breath. Beautiful. All right. Bringing your awareness back. Feel the connection to all things, all humans, all animals, all plants, rocks, all consciousness, the Akasha, the level of the consciousness and the history of all humanity, of the earth, of all species, of the potential future. Know that you have access to all this information. You are more than your physical body. You are nothing and you are everything. Within you is the spark of the divine. You're it. You're it, baby. So that was a beautiful piece of music. That was by Ajit Kaur, Kaur. The album was Darshan and the song was Dance of Ganesha. So ancient Hindu chant to in a modern interpretation. Hindu in Sanskrit, which is a living ancient language. So. Yeah, please share if anybody wants to share what they experienced. I don't know if you want to turn the recording off so people feel comfortable to share, Dottie. I don't know how it works at your.
I can do that. Let me say, stop the recording for a minute, pause the recording.
Yeah. Gratitude. I want to say gratitude. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my heart with you. So shine on. I want to say, shine your light. Don't serve us by being small. Your light makes us all brighter.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jane. That was wonderful. You're a great storyteller and you have lots of great stories to tell, lots of inspiration and wisdom to impart. And so thank you for being here. And thanks to all of you for being on the call and seeing your bright and shiny faces. And hope to see you again next month. Thank you again, Jane. So bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.